All right, listen up. So this will be the review session for the first exam, which I'll be having tomorrow. Brian's out of town today, so I'll be handling the review session. He will be here for the exam, though, when you take it on Thursday. So first things first, y'all don't have to be at this review session, so if you feel like you can handle this on your own, feel free to leave. Most importantly, don't distract your fellow students if they do need the extra help. So, what have y'all covered? What do you think will be on the exam? Loops. Okay. Loops. What kind of loops are there? Give me some hands so I can hear this. Do while loops. Another one? While loops. There's one more. That's not a loop. For loops. Okay. Someone, let's see. Show of hands. Who wants to explain how to initialize or how to set up a for loop? No, I mean like come up. Write me a for loop that will increment x by 1 10 times.
10 times? Okay.
Yep.
Or
Okay, I'm still hearing a lot of talking. I already said if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. So if you're going to continue to talk, please leave. Second is the condition. There you go. There you go. Simple, yep. So when you're doing a for loop, first part is going to be the initial value of whatever variable is going to be incremented, condition to continue running the for loop, and then your increment each time. Anybody any confusions on for loops?
Could you make the condition be count equals 9, or I mean 10, just count equals 10 since count just increases by 1 every time, and so it won't be an infinity?
What do you mean?
Like in lecture, if count was increased by 2, and then the condition statement of that loop terminating would be if count is equal to 10.
Less than or equal to?
I'm just saying a specific case. If we actually had it so count is equal to 10 when count runs in one integer every time, would it be okay?
No, this is the condition to keep running. Okay. So if you say count is equal to 10, it won't run because count is not equal to 10. You say it's less than. That's that condition has to execute to true or evaluate to true in order for the for loop to continue. So if we were to say count equals 9, the loop would never run. It would just terminate because count starts at 0. So you can make it less than or equal to 9, or you can make it less than 10. It'll still execute 10 times. But if you say equals, it will never execute.
Why is that again?
Because the second statement needs to evaluate, it's a Boolean that should evaluate to true in order for the loop to execute. So if count does not equal 10, and even that, it would have to be count equals 10. Yes.
I'm just wondering, can I just put in count outside in the 4? So I definite the first one down below in count equals 0. And then for count, semicolon, count, okay? Is it possible?
I'm not sure if it is possible in C++. I mean, it's a syntax. You can experiment, but kind of style always shows that you set that value to something in that first part. So, I mean, you can use this and say equal to 0, but it's always better just to say, and sometimes you can even just go, either one works. It's always better to initialize it if you're going to reuse it later on. All right. Yes?
So to clarify for the loop condition, the loop terminates when the second statement is evaluated as false, right?
Correct.
So it runs until that statement is no longer true.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes?
Can you go over the prefix and post incremental language real quick?
Sure. So pre and post increment, any specific questions on that?
I just still get tripped up with which one's like evaluated first.
So it's where the value that it is. So if you're saying, let's just go with C out. C out, or the command is going to increment X before it sends it to C out. And so if you want it to print, the next value, then you want to pre-increment. But if you want it to print the current value and then increment, you want it to be after. Everybody understand pre and post incrementing? Yes.
So when you put the pluses at the end, that's pre or post.
That's post incrementing. So this will, so if int x equals to 5, this will print 5, then but it would go, if you do it the other way, it would print 6. It would increment, then print 6. Yes?
So going back to the for loop, if instead of x plus plus, it would just be C out count, with that count being plus plus, would it print out 0 or would it print out 1 for the first run through?
0. Should print 0. So instead of having x plus plus, you just put just that.
Really? Okay. So it would print out the 0?
To start with. Okay. Any other specific topics y'all would like to cover? Anybody curious about anything discussed in lecture? Yes?
A question on the chapters. 1, 2, 3, or 7, 4, or I'm not sure where we left off exactly as far as what's going to be covered there.
What was the last thing you covered in lecture? Functions?
Yeah,
It'll cover up to the current. It'll cover up at least in a small part of the current lecture. There are things regarding functions on there. Speaking of, I have a couple of just kind of workout problems as good review. So, if-else statements. So writing a multi-way if-else statement for the output is alarm, boiler pressure too high. If the value of the variable boiler pressure is greater than 1,000, the output is boiler pressure too low if the value is less than 100. Otherwise, it should output the boiler pressure is within normal limits. How would I go about writing this? So I'll start by having the variable. And we'll just say this is inserted by the user, so we won't assign it anything. What's the first step? Anybody? You're going to write multi-way if-else statements, so multiple if statements, and you want it to output that the boiler pressure is too high if boiler pressure is greater than 1,000, boiler pressure too low if it's less than 100. Otherwise, it should just output that the boiler pressure is normal. Where do I begin? Hmm? Okay. Oops. I'm not good with IOStream. So if I'm going to write a CN statement, what am I supposed to do? There you go. Very good. Y'all are paying attention. What else can I do to get rid of using STD? So we're going to go ahead and throw that up here. Now this is an exam, so you don't have to worry about things like error tracking or anything like that. Just feel free to. Oh, thank you. Now what? If? $1,000. Something before it. There you go. Yep. Else what? Go ahead. There you go. Easy peasy. There's another one. This will be a little bit different. Actually, here I'm gonna. Yes. You don't have to if there's only a single command. Listen up. With if-else statements, you don't have to put the curly braces if you're executing only a single command after the if statement, but it's preferable that you do put the curly braces there so anybody reading your code could easily tell where the, or what statements it is referring to. Source. So the problem listed at the bottom, write a function definition for a function called inOrder that takes 3 arguments of type int. The function returns true. If the arguments are increasing, quiet down please, increasing order left to right, otherwise it'll return false. What should we do to write it? Yes?
Okay, so first we should prompt for the 3 numbers.
Well, it's a function, so you won't necessarily be. Just the function. Don't worry about prompting the user or anything like that.
So check if the second one's greater than the first one, and the third one's greater than the second one.
How do you create the function?
Let's see.
Has everybody read the question? I can go back to the putty. Okay. So, first things first, you have to determine what kind of variable you're returning. What are we looking for? Boolean. Correct. Then we have to do what? Name of the function. There you go. So, can you speak up a little bit?
I think if the x double equal to 1 and y double equal to 20.
No, they just have to be increasing order. So 1, 2, 3 will work, but also 10, 15, 20, 1, 4, 8. It just has to be in increasing order. It doesn't necessarily have to be in alphanumeric order. Less than or equal to y. Okay. What'd you say, sir? Good. X less than or equal to z. What about y? You know x is less than y and x is less than z, but are we sure y is? Okay.
I think just change that to y less than.
Correct. Can do that. Then what? There's also another way you can do this. Another way to make it smaller is obviously you're going to have the same. And I'll have Brian post these on the website, so don't feel like you have to write everything down. I see some of y'all writing pretty quickly. Another way you can also do this is instead of having the if-else statement, you can just say because that is a Boolean statement, so it will evaluate to true or false. Oops. Okay. Yes.
So every Boolean requires that
I'm sorry?
for that kind of.
Font like a Boolean function?
Yeah.
Yes, it'll require that you either return, you explicitly say you return a condition to return true, or a condition to return false, or you return some type of Boolean evaluation like at the bottom, because that will, depending on the variables entered, will evaluate to true or false. So both sides are covered.
So it always should be always like that.
Hmm?
It should be always like that.
It's your choice. Both of these are correct answers. You can choose either one, whichever style you prefer. Yes?
So if a function gets to the bracket and hasn't returned anything, does it return anything?
You'll get an error.
Okay.
The compiler will let you know because it'll recognize that you're not returning something. Like it'll not quite sure with C++, but at C you get an error, especially if you just have it in an if statement. It'll say that you're not, that it's a conditional return, not an explicit return. So having the else, make sure that's taken care of. I'm sorry, can you say that again? I'm sorry, does it what? What do you mean?
Because the return is for the if, but we still have the return plus for the past compatible.
The return 0? When you like integer name.
That it's only, you're only returning what you want to return a variable that matches the function type. So int main, it's just common that you put return 0 at the end of it. You don't always want to put that. You only want to return what matches your function. So this one is a Boolean. So you only want to return Booleans. You don't want to return integers. Was that kind of answer your question? Okay.
I think what they're asking is, because we've seen a lot of stuff where everything's enclosed in int main, so your functions are all within int main. So at the end of int main, you see return 0, because that's all we've been doing so far. So everyone's used to seeing a return 0 at the end.
Okay.
You have an int main function, and then you have something else inside of it.
Okay.
I'm guessing that's where that's coming from. And right now, we're just kind of writing outside of that, so we're not
Gotcha. So just to kind of elaborate on what you were saying, a lot of you have been writing kind of mini functions inside int main. Okay, well, as you move on, and this is kind of what's starting to go on in your lecture, is you're going to move outside of, you're going to actually write functions separate from int main that you will call from main. And so the thing you always want to watch out for is this. What variable type is the function? So this is a Boolean, you're going to be returning true or false. Int main returns some type of integer. And so you would never case this function inside an int main. Oops. So you're not going to case this inside of a main with another return 0. That's
We just got there, so I think some people,
okay.
because we haven't done much for programming.
Yes.
What is
argc, argv, I'll just mention it once, then we'll move on because it won't be necessary for things. It's user input. When you call a program from the command line, anything immediately after that is going to be the variables that it pulls in, and argc is how many you have, and argv is the char array that's going to be holding each variable. Or have y'all been doing just int main void? Okay. That's no problem. So that's good. And in the exam, you won't have anything past this type of material, this kind of function. That's as far as the material is going to go. So anything before that is fair game. Yes?
So what format is the exam written in?
It's going to be a mixture of true, false, fill in the blank, and write out your answer.
So on paper?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be all on paper. It's 5 true, false, 4 fill in the blank, and a number of free response, and an extra credit. Yes?
I just didn't get what do you mean by goal in order? Is that did you create a function called
Yes, that's
in order?
writing this creates a function. It creates a Boolean function called in order that accepts 3 integers as variables.
And then when you want to call it, just write in order.
Yes. You would write, so you would have your int main, and you would have 3 ints, and you would call, you would say,
You have to assign your function calls to a variable.
because, yes, because in that case, you're returning a variable.
Right. Earlier, I know we talked about in class, you would declare the function itself, like declare the function in order, and then do the call.
You would have,
I mean, that's the only example.
it's called a, I understand, it's called a function prototype, and you would put it ahead. You'd call that above your main. So that would be the full kind of use of it. And obviously you would assign some value to X, Y, and Z. I just kind of put those there for kind of just showing it. Yes?
So for main, you need to put a return statement because it's returning the main return statement, the order function.
Correct. You would want to return a 0 at the end of your main. You could all, I mean, because after you do that, you could go, see out. That would kind of be the proper way to create and use that function, though. For the exam, if you're asked a question in terms of creating a function, this part right here is all you need to know. You don't have to worry about creating main, declaring the function. Just create a function that uses the proper return type, variables, and executes properly. And there are more than one right answers for a lot of these. Yes?
In C++, it's 2 equals to 1.
Hmm?
It's 2 equals to 1.
Oh. Oh yeah, fair point.
Can I use 1 or 0 to, can I use 1 or 0 to instead of the true or false?
I'm not sure. You could experiment with it, but it's up to you.
Anything except 0 equal to true in C++.
Sorry?
I remember that anything except 0 equal to true in C++ language.
Google it. Just check your computer. I mean, a lot of these things can be written different ways. Depending on the syntax, you can say that. I won't pretend to be an expert on C++, so I don't know what will happen. But this also is easier for someone reading your code to understand, and that is also a big part of it. Speaking of an announcement for your assignments, assignment 2 is due tonight, correct? Okay, starting with assignment 3, I'm sure y'all are familiar with the CS161 style guide that's on the class website. Starting with the next assignment, you're gonna need to conform to that style guide. Yes?
Will we have feedback on the first 2 assignments before assignment 3 is due?
Yes, you will. I've just been added into the system to grade, so that's why things are a little delayed. You should be able to see grades for at least the first assignment tomorrow and hopefully the second. But as for the style guide, yes, we will give feedback, and as well, if kind of take y'all's temperature on this, as we're going through and looking at the assignments, if we find any particularly good solutions, we will send you an email asking permission to use your code as a solution. We will obviously remove your name and all identifying information, but we would like to use it for solutions because everybody thinks differently with coding, and it's nice to see where students are coming from, especially as fresh minds learning it. So it's up to you. If you want us to use your code, feel free to tell us no if you're uncomfortable with it. Any other topics? Yes?
Can you explain void, type void?
Type void, there's just nothing. If you write, actually right here, you could just say in order, you can say void, and instead of returning true, you could just write and see out false. Yeah, if you use void, you don't have to return anything. And over here, instead of saying result equals this, you would just call the function that would execute this function and go back to main. That's all that void is. There's just nothing's returned. Yes?
So for functions that do return values, like true or false or integer or whatever, you can just call them without assigning their return to a value, right?
You can. Depending on the compiler, it might not catch it, but nothing's going to happen.
Well, I mean, like if it does something else.
What do you mean?
Like, increment, for example, is, I think it's a function, or at least it's very similar to one, because you can just say x plus plus, right, and it'll increment x by 1. But you could also say c out x plus plus, and that'll both increment x by 1 and output the return value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a function that does return something, but you don't always have to use its return, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if this is back to a Boolean, you could say, C out. You could do that. And it would print the result of that function because that's what's being returned. You don't necessarily have to case it to anything, but you can print it out. So the result won't be saved anywhere. It'll just be printed out for the user to view. Any other questions?
So are we only making functions, we're not using it within our code?
No. This right here, from 53 to 59, is the only thing that you would be asked for. You wouldn't be asked to write a full C++ program, just a function. So the things you need to focus on is getting function type, the function type like Boolean, the required variables, and then it executes what it's supposed to as given in the instructions. Okay. If anybody doesn't have any questions on the exam, I will take questions on assignment 2 or lab 2. If anybody even has any.
Number 12, I think, about a bit to byte or something like that.
On the assignment or lab?
That's one is number 12.
Slides, so what you can do is put the calendar together. So you just put all these placeholders in, right? That too. So we aren't actually having a PowerPoint.
So
We're just doing this review.
So we
So there is
using class divide.
if you does
num
post
bits
stuff
in
up on
bytes
main.
8 like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, so
Class
Can everyone please quiet down? I'm trying to hear the student.
define
Yes.
num underscore bit underscore in underscore bytes space 8 and then
Okay.
writing down like that. It will be should be outside. Size of should be like will be automatically switched to bytes or something like that.
Okay.
It's kind of confusing how to use size of. I'm looking in the C++ how to use it still not sure how it works.
See me during office hours and we'll talk about it. Yes. Yes, I will have office hours today. Does anybody have any other questions relating to exams, assignments, or labs? If you're not comfortable asking questions about the assignments or labs, I will have office hours immediately after class.
Just the condition.
Hold up, one second, bring it back. You can get it signed off today if it's all done. And if not, you can get it signed off in the very beginning of lab on Friday. Yes.
I'll ask you after.
Okay. All right, if nobody else has anything, we're done for the day.